to Direction Northeast. Hello, I'm Abby Hathorn. This program is a presentation of the Communications Department of Northeast State Community College. In this episode of Direction Northeast, we'll look at the process of reporting national news and working with national news networks as we sit down with NBC affiliate reporter Tracie Potts.
Our family gets together nearly every weekend. We laugh together, we enjoy each other, we have quality time together, and Northeast State has afforded us those opportunities. I'm a graduate of Northeast State, and my husband's a graduate of Northeast State, and both of our children chose to go to Northeast State. And I think it's because it provided us with an affordable, quality education, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm Susan Graybill, and our whole family got our start at Northeast State.
Our guest for this program is a TV reporter whose beat includes Washington, D.C. and the halls of Congress. She provides local affiliate reporters for over 150 stations and also appears on MSNBC. She has covered the royal wedding, the election of Pope Benedict, and the death of Nelson Mandela. Hi, Tracie. Welcome to Direction Northeast.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Abby.
That's wonderful. To start out, what got you into broadcasting?
So that actually started a long time ago in high school. Believe it or not, we had a program similar to Direction Northeast, but not nearly as technically advanced as what you have here. But it was something we did in-house in high school to share announcements and interesting things. I was on the technical staff, I was in front of the camera, I was behind the camera, and honestly, I just thought it was a lot of fun. And I thought, if I'm gonna do something for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 maybe years of my life, I should do something that's fun. So I think that really gave me an appetite for television. When I went into college, I actually thought I would do print journalism as I looked at it more, but broadcasting had a bit of a different appeal, a bit of a different challenge.
So what led you to working for NBC?
So the NBC thing was kind of interesting. I worked in Alabama and here in East Tennessee. I worked in Knoxville for almost 5 years in a couple of smaller to medium market TV stations. And I was moving to California, found a wonderful guy, decided to get married, and needed to move my career. It wasn't the easiest thing to do to go from Knoxville to Los Angeles, which is where I was headed. And I kind of, knocked on doors and tried to get opportunities, and it wasn't really working. And at one point, it did work out. I got a contact from NBC about a job that later turned into the job in Los Angeles. And I will say I was in LA with them for about 6.5 years. I've been for almost the last 12 years in Washington. So obviously it turned out to be a really good opportunity I'm thankful for.
Oh, absolutely. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So out of all the different positions and jobs that you've had with different stations and working different things like that, what would you say is probably your favorite that you've done?
So interestingly, unlike a lot of people in TV, because it's the norm to move around to a lot of different jobs, I've only had 3 jobs. The job with NBC I've done in 2 different places, but it's essentially the same type of work. So I don't have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs, but I've enjoyed different things about them all. The first job that I had in Alabama was a great start. It gave me an opportunity to learn and make some mistakes while I was learning and prepared me for coming here to East Tennessee. I spent almost 5 years in Knoxville, and even though I've been at NBC a long time, the experience here in Tennessee, in Knoxville, had to have been the biggest growing experience I think I had. And what I mean by that, when I came to Knoxville, the level I was at, and when I left, I think there was a lot of growth as a reporter, what I learned, how comfortable I became on camera, but even more so than that, what I learned about the importance of reporting and how to do it and how to do it right. So, I don't want to pick one job and say one was the favorite. Obviously, I've learned a lot at NBC as well. I had some great opportunities, but I would say working in Knoxville in East Tennessee had to be the biggest growth experience. And without that, I don't think I would have lasted almost 20 years at NBC.
Exactly, so that's obviously very important.
It was.
So out of all the different events and things that you've worked and news coverage, what would you say is your favorite news things that you've been able to cover?
I have been really blessed. I've had an opportunity to sort of be part of history in terms of covering so many different things. A couple of inaugurations. I've been overseas a few times. I've done a couple of Olympics. I was there when Pope Benedict was selected in Rome. Being able to travel is wonderful, but I must say the story, I would say, I don't know if I would call it my favorite, but definitely the one that had the most impact on me was when I traveled to Johannesburg, South Africa to cover the death of Nelson Mandela. It was something that we had to plan for a very long time, and then it came up rather suddenly, obviously. But when I got there, a couple of things. First of all, as an African American, to be able to travel to Africa and see Black people in a different setting, half a world away, was a great life experience for me. I would love to take my family and my kids back and do that. But even more so, going there and seeing, as I told a group of students earlier, I went through a range of emotions covering that story. It was a death. It wasn't a happy story at all. We got there, people were very sad. It was very immediate. It had just happened. Some of the things that I learned and saw about life there, boy, you think we have polar opposites here in America. I saw everything from shanty towns to gated communities that looked like Beverly Hills and beyond. And it said a lot about, where we are as a people generally. It's not just here, in the United States. There are people who are really suffering.
Now, you start your day, or you start filming every day at 4 a.m. Were you always a morning person, or is that something that you just had to adapt with whenever you got into that career?
I am still not a morning person. This morning, I didn't have to wake up until 7:30, and I was so happy. It was like sleeping in. My day starts about 2 a.m., and to be honest, it starts the night before because, people see me on TV, but there are a lot of people who work behind the scenes. My producers the day before to prepare to help me do the job that I do. And so they start sending me information the night before, and I'm so curious. It's hard to go to bed early, so I'm up late reading most of the time. And then we get up very early. Like I said, my day starts about 2 a.m. to prepare for that first Early Today broadcast at 4 a.m. So no, after 5 years of doing this, I am still not a morning person, but I have come to understand that morning news is very important, and you will start to see if you watch local news, national news, a lot more emphasis has been placed on morning news programs. Remember when the Today Show used to be from 7 to 9, then it went from 7 to 10, now it's from 7 to 11. Morning news programs were starting at 6 a.m. when I first did them, and then they started at 5:30 and 5, and now you have some, even a bit earlier. People are craving news in the morning. They need to start their day with a decent understanding, not of just weather and traffic, which is big in the morning, of course, but with kind of an understanding of what kind of world am I going into today? What do I need to know about this world that I'm going into? So for that reason, no, I'm not a morning person, but I'm glad to be a part of doing morning news.
Working on Capitol Hill, are there certain security clearances that you have to maintain?
Good question. Yes, I do have to have a credential to work in and to operate at the Capitol, and I make sure I keep that up. We are, Capitol Hill is sort of a generic term for you've got the Capitol, you've got the House and Senate office buildings that are part of that Capitol complex, but then you've got the larger community around it, including my building, which is about a block away from the Capitol, that are all considered part of Capitol Hill. But because it's Washington, because there's been a history, we all live in the shadow of 9/11. I literally still have things under my desk from, there was Cipro that was given out to people during the anthrax scare, gas masks and things like that are still, I'm sure they're not operable anymore. But, we all live in the shadow of 9/11, terrorist concerns. And so, yes, security in Washington is a lot tighter than it used to be. And yes, I definitely have to keep that Capitol clearance in order to do my job and let people know what's going on there.
Now, on the subject of news in general, how would you say that social media has affected news and reporting?
It's interesting. People find out about things so quickly now. As soon as something happens, it's on Twitter. Someone's got a picture on Instagram. If you still use Facebook, because, you know, all the young people have moved on, but a lot of people are still connected to Facebook, and it's still very big for business. You know, it's just out there so quickly. It's on blogs. People are talking about it. People are Snapchatting about it. So people get information quickly. The challenge is making sure the information is accurate and making sure people understand what raw pictures and what raw information mean. Just because you see something that happened, you don't quite know what happened before it, you don't know what happened after it, you don't know why it happened, and you don't necessarily know the important context around what was happening. And that's why I think journalism is still very relevant, because it's our job to put all of that in context for people.
Now, on that subject as well, where people are able to share videos and things so quickly, you have lots of bystander videos. Everybody's pulling out their phone during an event to capture
Sure.
video. Would you say that that is considered a type of reporting, or how does that work?
Well, it's a type of reporting, but again, it's just giving you raw information. And then what I see a lot on social media is people then start to ascribe reasons and other things to that, and all they're seeing is, you know, if you see cell phone video of, we see this all the time, a guy gets beat up on the street or attacked on the street, it appears, by a police officer. So what happened before that? What happened after that? Was the officer provoked before the video? I'm not saying that all of these are justified. Certainly we've seen some that clearly, and the courts and others have later determined were not justified. But I just really try to caution people from taking raw video. It tells you something, and for that reason it's important. It doesn't tell you the whole story, and that's why I think it needs to be considered in conjunction with fair and balanced reporting, so that you do get the whole story. And then it's not my job to make up your mind about it. It's my job to give you the tools to make up your mind about it. But it has definitely changed how we do our jobs, how quickly information gets out there, and what we do with that information once we have it.
Now, with all these types of where people will just upload videos to Facebook and social media.
Sure.
Do you think that that's affected how we as a society look at gruesome news? Do you think that we've become more numb to it?
Definitely. Have you ever scrolled through your Facebook feed or your Instagram or even Twitter? And I know particularly with Facebook, you know, the videos are just playing now as you scroll through them. And there are things that I've seen that I'm like, wow, I didn't want to see that. Maybe I need to fix my settings. But yes, I think that people have become very numb to things. You know, I have 2 young children. I say they're young. Okay, one's in high school. In my mind, they're still young. But one is a teenager and one is a preteen. And I still try to be very careful with the things that I expose them to. And a lot of times they say, but Mommy, we see this stuff in school. We hear this stuff in school. And my response is, that doesn't mean I want to give you a steady diet of it. But yes, to answer your question, Abby, I think that people have become just very numb. And it's really disappointing when you think about the younger generation. You know, our children who see things that we as adults, young adults, older adults may consider shocking, and sometimes they just don't consider it shocking at all.
Exactly. And with all that in the news, would you say that reporters have to be more careful with those types of controversial topics, or is aggressive journalism still appreciated and studied?
Well, you know, so I have to look at this from 2 sides. Let me put on my journalism hat, because that's the way you asked me that question. As a journalist, I think we do have to make sure that, number one, that we are not using shocking video for shock value. There are times when it may need to be appropriate to show something. If there was an unprovoked attack on a civilian by an officer, that video is relevant. People need to see it, and they probably need to see the whole context of it as opposed to one snippet of it, and certainly not an edited version of it. So that video in itself is newsworthy? Do we need to show it in teases? Do we need to show it repeatedly? I think these are things that journalists need to think about, because after a while, are we showing it just to get people to watch our news, or are we showing it because we're trying to use it to share important information and make a point? It's a fine line. And I think it's one that we need to look at very, very carefully. Now, let me put my other hat on, because I'm a mom. And I tell people this, I can't separate who I am from what I do. I'm a mom. I don't like that my kids at dinner hour see things that I think are inappropriate for them. They're a little older now, but when they're 6, 7, 8, I think we do need to be, or morning news, which I do, they're going to school. There is a balance that we journalists always have of what people want to know and what they need to know, and also what's appropriate at different times of the day. Do I show the same video and the same amount of that video on the 5 o'clock news where young people may be watching versus on the 11 o'clock news where the younger kids may be now gone to bed? I think these are, I'm not saying that I have the answers, and I'm not trying to be, as my kids would like to say, all preachy about it, but I think that these are conversations that journalists need to have. We need to take those conversations seriously, because the answer in one situation may be very different than the answer in another. But we do need to be having those conversations to make sure that we are not just arbitrarily shocking the audience for no good reason.
Now, on the discussion of news ethics, what's your opinion on the recent events with Brian Williams?
So, everyone, I think, including Brian Williams, was very disappointed in what the NBC investigation found, that there were things that he was telling that did not happen. And I think he came out and very clearly said that. I think that I've met Brian. I like Brian. And I think one of the things that the news manager said after the fact is true. So Brian has an entire body of work over many years that has a lot of value, that has contributed. And what he did on more than one occasion was not acceptable. And I think he's admitted that. And I think he was punished as a result of that. Now, we could talk all day long about whether his punishment was appropriate. Should he have been brought back? Should he have not been brought back? I think we need to consider a couple of things here. There are journalistic, ethical decisions, and there are also business decisions. And we journalists, and I'm one of them, I got into this, we're do-gooders, right? We got into this because we want to be fair and we want to be balanced, and we should. And our credibility, once it's shot, it's shot. If I say something and it's untrue, then why would you believe me the next time I say something? So sometimes people aren't very forgiving. But on the other hand, we don't go to work for free. We all want to get paid. News is a business, and they have to be cognizant of the fact that they have to make money. And to pour many years of promotion and time and effort into someone, and then leave them out there for the competition to use against you, which is exactly what would have happened. Brian is still extremely popular, despite, I'm not making any excuses, and I don't think he did either. It was wrong. But beyond it was wrong, then what do you do? And I think a business decision had to be made. Do we allow the competition to use him and benefit from everything that we've poured into him? Or do we try to find a way that doesn't happen? And, the decision was made that he stays with NBC News. I think Brian and others are all hoping that at some point the situation will be behind, and that he will. I would think if I were him, my biggest concern would be, I really want to do everything I can to work to make sure that people trust me again. And I think that's really the bottom line for all of us. My credibility is very important. And so if I get to the point where that's lost, it's something very valuable that I've lost. And I think that he's learned from that. and I certainly hope that we can all sort of move forward. People may or may not like the fact that he's back on the air, but you know, it's the decision that's been made. I'm not quite nearly that far up the food chain, but I'm just hoping that we can move forward in a way that people trust what we have to say, because there are a lot of hardworking journalists out there.
Exactly. So what advice could you give to young journalists or people pursuing broadcasting or any kind of news career on ways to be unbiased and fair in their reporting?
So a couple of things. What I often tell young people when I'm talking to them is there's bias and there's perspective. And one of them is necessary and one of them is not. It is never my job to tell Abby what to think about a story.
Exactly.
It is my job to share with you all perspectives of a story that I can reasonably in a minute 15, which is about how long I get to tell most of my stories, to share that with you in a fair and balanced way, regardless of how I feel about it. I cover some of the most controversial stories in America right now from time to time. I cover politics, I cover courts, Supreme Court, same-sex marriage, health care. I'm an individual, I'm a mom, I have a family, I'm a woman. My opinions about those stories, I'm an individual. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't have opinions about those stories. They absolutely don't belong in my reporting. On the other hand, the fact that I am a woman, the fact that I am a mom, the fact that I am a Southerner, the fact that I am African American, those are all part of my perspective. And so when we start looking at what's an important story to tell, I may have a different view of something to bring to the table than you do because of your experience and my experience and our backgrounds. They may be different. So I think it's important to have people of all different perspectives at the table, behind the scenes, before you guys ever see the story, deciding what do we need to tell people. But absolutely, when that story hits the air, my opinion should not be in it.
Exactly. Now, you do over 30 live shots a day. Does that ever get overwhelming?
Sometimes, yes. And honestly, when we're on the road, when we're doing big stories like sometimes, you know, unfortunately, natural disasters, conventions, sometimes things that are planned, Olympics, I've done as many as 50, almost 60 a day. It can get overwhelming, but the most challenging thing for me, if you are in Tri-Cities and you're seeing me on the air and you are live shot number 50, I should have no less energy than I did on live shot number 1. That's the biggest challenge for me. It's not fair for your live shot to be bad, or for me to forget to mention things, or for me to have lost energy because you happen to be number 50 on the list, and I did many before. So to me, the most challenging thing is giving every one of those the energy that they properly deserve.
Now, for someone who doesn't know the difference, why there's different, like you have NBC and Fox News and all these different broadcasting stations, sure, how would you explain the difference between, say, NBC and Fox News?
Oh my, interesting question. So what has developed over time, you know, I'm gonna approach people who, you know, remember watching news like 30 years ago, you know, the Cronkite years. We used to just basically have these 3 networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS, sort of the legacy networks, and we sort of did straight news, and that was it. And then cable came into play, and the cable networks sometimes have a different approach, and they have a different point of view. They lean right, or they lean left. And what I always tell people is just know what you're watching. I'm not the person who's gonna say they should not be doing news and they should not be doing news, and you know, it's a big world out there. And if I'm, you know, let's say I'm very conservative, I may want to hear news from a conservative viewpoint. Or if I'm very liberal, I may want to hear news from a liberal viewpoint. But I think there always need to be seasoned, fair, and balanced journalists out there who are going to shoot it straight to you. And then if you choose to get your news from other sources, just be upfront about what you are. I just really feel it's important for people to know, and as I often like to tell people, you wouldn't eat from an establishment where you didn't know what you were consuming. If you look at a place and you go, oh, that doesn't look quite good, I'm not sure how clean it is, what's their health rating, who's that guy behind the counter, we scrutinize things like that. We don't always scrutinize where we're getting our news from, and we should. So if someone's serving you up a conservative dose of news, you should know that you're getting that it's a chicken patty and it's not a hamburger.
Exactly. So my last question is going to be, what is one or two big pieces of advice you would give to someone pursuing a broadcasting career?
Be humble. I think that, I'm very honored to be here with you today, and I'm very honored that people would think enough of me to want to watch and hear about what I do. But I'm just a person who does a job and people just happen to see it. Everybody out there does a job, you just don't have a camera on you all day. I think once you get into this business, it's very easy for people to inflate you beyond what you are. And I try very hard, and sometimes people have to pull my coattail, and that's fine. I think it's important to be humble, and here's why. I'm here for you. I'm not here for me. I'm not here to make myself a big, important TV person. I'm here to give you news and information that's extremely important for you and your family to know. I need to be taken out of that equation. If I stay humble, I can much more identify with who you are than if I'm much more concerned with who I am and making my career. The other thing, and I love to tell this to young people, be curious about everything and everyone. How does this work? Why does this work this way? I think it really benefits news as a whole when we are developing a new generation of journalists that are very curious about things. Because if you have questions, you're going to dig really hard for the answers.
Oh, exactly. And thank you so much for joining us today, Tracie, on Direction Northeast. It was great meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back in just a moment to wrap up Direction Northeast.
My name is Ann Ravel. I'm an actress, and I got my start at Northeast State Community College. Just as acting truly allows me to express myself and learn new things about myself, my whole experience at Northeast State has allowed me to do that. I've found new interests, new hobbies, new passions that I would have never known had I not come here. Northeast State gave me a quality education, amazing friendships, but most importantly, it allowed me to discover who I want to be.
That concludes the program for today. We have talked with guest Tracie Potts about television news and the impact it has on its audience. Community is very important to the students at Northeast State Community College, and this program takes a look at a few of the subjects they find important. Until we meet next time, on behalf of the students, staff, and faculty of Northeast State Community College, I'm Abby Hathorn, and this is Direction Northeast.